Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to the Beyond Wellness Radio podcast. Feel free and head over to justinhealth.com. We have all of our podcast transcriptions there, as well as video series on different health topics ranging from thyroid to hormones, ketogenic diets, and gluten. While you're there, you can also schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or our colleagues and staff to help dive into any pressing health issues you really want to get to the root cause on. Again, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free and share the information with friends or family, and enjoy the show. Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today we have an awesome podcast in the queue, the top 7 root causes of inflammation. I am here with Dr. David Jockers. Really excited to have him today to chat with. David, how are we doing, man?
I'm doing great, Justin. Always great to connect with you. You're one of the leading minds in functional health, functional medicine. And so always great to collaborate and discuss really important topics that are affecting so many people around the world.
Oh, excellent, man. I'm really excited to chat with you. I mean, you could just pull up one of your blog posts and just have the infographic run the whole entire podcast, right? So I'm really stoked to chat about it. So first off, out of the gate, I think we should just kind of define inflammation for listeners. How would you define it pretty simply?
Yeah, inflammation is an immune response that's actually designed to help protect your body. See, our body is hardwired to protect us from dying from an infection. So, our ancestors, when they would go out hunting, or let's
Mm-hmm.
say they were in war or something like that, they would be attacked. They would have some sort of a flesh wound, and then bacteria could get into that flesh wound, into their bloodstream, and then spread throughout their body and get into their lungs, cause pneumonia, get into their nervous system, cause meningitis, and kill them. This is really the leading cause of death throughout the history of
Mm-hmm.
mankind. Even when people were in war, they really they tended not to die. Like, it was, they were more commonly were dying from a infection they got from a wound than the actual
Mm-hmm.
wound itself.
Right.
And so the body is adapted to create this inflammatory response whenever you have an injury, right? And when we think about injuries, we think about, okay, a sprained ankle, let's say. What
Mm-hmm.
happens? You end up with a lot of inflammation in that joint, and that inflammation is there to help protect against any pathogens getting in. It also helps break down damaged ligaments, tendons, different structures that are in there that are involved, and it's all part of the healing and remodeling process. And so, inflammation itself is actually very therapeutic, very healing, and it's designed to help keep you alive. The problem is that most people in our society now are dealing with chronic inflammation because their main injury is actually in their gut. It's in their digestive system. So the gut, when that becomes damaged, the body responds just like if we sprained an ankle or if we got a cut or a burn. It creates this inflammatory response. You just don't see it. So you don't actually see it. And oftentimes you don't even feel it, at least not in your gut. Like, a lot of people are not feeling gut pain or even, just like a stabbing pain, even though the gut is damaged. But when that happens, when the gut becomes damaged, now proteins are seeping into the bloodstream, and the body says, okay, these are abnormal proteins, abnormal bacteria in here. Let's turn up inflammation throughout the body. So that person may experience eczema or some sort of skin inflammation, acne, rashes. Another person may experience joint pain. So when they have leaky gut and their body's ramping up inflammation, they notice it in their joints. Different joints are hurting. Another person may have a lot of brain fog and fatigue. So it can impact us in different ways. But in our society today, the inflammation is less so coming from like a physical injury, and more so coming from injury in the gut.
100%. 100%. So kind of my simple kind of metaphor to understand inflammation is you have breakdown and build up. Catabolic, anabolic. Anabolic builds you up, catabolic breaks you down. You have things that are responsible for the breakdown, like cortisol, stress hormone, interleukin cytokines, right? Inflammation in general is a good thing. When you go to the exercise, when you go to the gym and you lift weights and you do push-ups, you're creating an inflammatory response in the pec area. But then you have this anabolic buildup of remodeling protein so your chest gets stronger and bigger. But there's a healthy balance, right? And so what we're talking about here is the inflammation causing a little bit more of a breakdown than you're able to build up. And so over time, whether it's your brain, connective tissue, joints, cartilage, gut lining, all of this inflammation is causing the body to break down. And depending on where that tissue breaks down is where the symptoms occur. If it breaks down on the cartilage, arthritis. If it breaks down on the blood-brain barrier, brain fog, mood issues. If it breaks down on the gut, you can have more autoimmune issues. You could have digestive issues. If it breaks down, let's just say, in other tissues in the body, it could be MS or type 1 diabetes. And so, yeah, so depending on where the tissue is where conventional medicine puts that ICD-10 code. but we're looking deeper under the hood and we're trying to get to the underlying mechanism. So first off, we kind of define terms, and then now we can go into other root causes and root palliatives to kind of help support it. Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
for sure. And you have, that acute inflammation, which again is very therapeutic and healing. And then you've got chronic inflammation. The big
Hmm.
difference there is the body, when it's in this breakdown buildup cycle, that is normal and healthy. But when that never gets turned off and the body is
Yes.
continuously in this sort of healing cycle and it never gets turned
Yes.
off, that's when we end up causing a lot of long term problems. And that's what's
Yes.
happening in our society.
Yeah, inflammation is a good thing because of the remodeling that takes place. It's the out of control chronicness. And especially when we look deeper at the hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, if that's kind of chronically high or even chronically depleted, that's where we're going to start to have big symptoms. What would you say the next big root causes?
Yeah. So, at the root, leaky gut is a huge
Yep.
factor with all of this, right? Because again, if the gut is damaged, now we've got proteins, we've got bacteria, yeast, different things like that seeping into that bloodstream. And that tells the body, okay, wow, we need to signal the alarm because these things, we shouldn't have abnormal proteins or
Hmm.
bacteria going around in our bloodstream. That puts us at risk for pneumonia, for meningitis, for something like that. So we've got to turn up and ramp up inflammation. And the body kind of has this like threshold level for how much abnormal protein and bacteria should be in the bloodstream. And once we get over that threshold, it's like a massive alarm throughout the whole body. And then we're releasing a lot of cortisol, right? We're releasing a lot of hormones that are associated with fight or flight. And that suppresses the hormones that have to do with healing and repairing sexual reproduction, our anabolic, our
Yep.
testosterone, our estrogen, our progesterone, because we're putting all of our energy into fight or flight,
Yep.
cortisol and epinephrine. And this is why leaky gut can cause issues with sleep, for example. A lot of times people have insomnia, and it's really related to leaky gut and damage in their gut. So that's always the first thing that I look at. And then I kind of building off of that is just we have to look at their diet, right? Inflammatory foods
Yep.
are one of the main triggers for leaky gut.
Yep, 100%. So of course, like you talked about proteins, right? So the big proteins, I think you agree would be your glutinous proteins from grains, and
Yep.
it could even be gluten-free grains too. Sometimes rice can be a problem, corn can be a problem, especially if there's GMO residue on that, right? Like the pesticides that are used, right? Roundup,
Oh yeah.
etc. And then of course, high fructose corn syrup can have a lot of different corn residue as well. Casein in a lot of dairy, especially if it's more conventional based dairy with a lot of the hormones and things in there. So all those things can be a problem. And then of course, the more our digestion isn't optimal. So if we don't have enough acid and enzyme and bile salts, we got to break these proteins down into smaller units called peptides and amino acids. When these globules are just too big, that can create more food allergens because our bodies have these big proteins they're seeing in the bloodstream, and that can create more stress. So we got to break things down. And if that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system is going, those enzymes and acids and bile salts may be really at non-optimal levels, and we have these bigger food globules in our intestines.
For sure. We weren't meant to eat on the go, right? And so we
Hmm.
really need to be more relaxed state, take a few deep breaths. We always pray before we eat,
Yep.
right? That puts us in a state of gratitude, activates that parasympathetic nervous system, the vagus nerve, which travels from your brain
Yep.
down into the stomach, into the gut, and activates the production of those key digestive juices so you can really break down the foods effectively. So, yeah, we definitely need to eat with we have to have mindful eating habits and eat foods that are nutrient dense and not foods that are higher on the inflammatory spectrum, like you talked about. So yeah, that's huge. And then we got the third big thing is keeping our blood sugar stable, right?
Mm.
So blood
Yep.
sugar stability is super important. So like if you're eating breakfast and your breakfast consists of, let's say, an apple or a banana or something like that, and you're only eating, let's say, fruit, even though it's a healthier, more nutrient dense food, basically all it is sugar. And so what happens then? Your blood sugar goes up, insulin comes out, brings that sugar down, and now your blood sugar is down. And now your body says, okay, blood sugar is down. And if you're not metabolically flexible, or your body's not very good at burning fat for fuel, that becomes again, the alarm gets signaled because it says, okay, wow, we don't have enough sugar to fuel the brain. So we're hypoglycemic now. So
Mhm.
now we need to pump out more cortisol, more epinephrine to get the blood sugar up because cortisol is a glucocorticoid, meaning that it
Yep.
activates blood sugar release from the liver,
Mhm.
from the muscles into the bloodstream to get the sugar back up. But with that, we also kind of get this effect on our brain, this high cortisol,
Yep.
epinephrine. where it can cause us to have cravings. It can cause us to have mood swings, irritability, anxiety, a lot of different issues like that. And that just drives up inflammation in our body as well.
Yep, 100%. And also just having blood sugar go up and down, up and down. If you're relying on lots of glucose to be your fuel source, unless you're doing lots of exercise and burning it up and you kind of have that ectomorph body type, these are the people that are kind of your basketball players, your marathon runners. These are the ones that when they eat a bunch of carbs, they just have to go run around the block because their glucose just triggers their body to need to move. If you're not, keto adapted, right? Glucose is a dirty fuel in your body. It tends to cause a lot of oxidative stress. This is why diabetics with high blood sugar, that kind of oxidation is going to create problems with the eyes, the vasculature, peripheral nerves. And so it's good, especially if you're not super active, to be doing a lot more, to be more keto adapted and to kind of
Yeah.
really switch your fuel source to
Yeah.
being more kind of fat based, which creates less oxidative stress.
Yeah, so you really want to build your diet around protein and healthy
Yep.
fats, right? I
Yep.
recommend typically when you eat, you want to eat roughly about 30, maybe 40 grams of protein. If you're trying to put on muscle mass, let's say you're weightlifting or something like that, you may even need more. But when you sit down and eat a meal, you should be looking at somewhere around 30 to 40 grams of protein in there,
Yep.
roughly around 30 grams or so of fat in there. Somewhere in that range is usually a good range. Depends, it can obviously range a little bit depending on the individual's body size or gender, their activity level, but somewhere in that range where you're getting the fat, you're getting the protein, and then you might have a little bit of carbs and some vegetables or maybe some berries, some low glycemic fruit, but you don't want a tremendous amount. You really want to minimize the amount of starch that you're consuming throughout the day. It's starch and sugars, and just get them from real foods after you have your protein and your fat levels, your macros right on your protein and fat.
100%. And kind of my philosophy is anywhere between a palm to a full hand of protein. That's usually 3 to 6 ounces. Again, if you're bigger, it may go higher to 8 ounces. If you're
Yeah,
doing a lot of lifting of weights, you may be able to shift that. And then usually carbohydrate wise, I kind of say between two fists to two full hands. And I would say mostly vegetables is pretty good.
yeah,
And if you're going to throw some starch in there, there's some theories. I tend to go later in the day because of the carb
yeah.
backloading theory of just being more insulin sensitive later in the day. And I try to stack in the fast at night with really lower carb throughout lunch to
Yeah.
really tap into more being able to utilize ketones and fat for fuel. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree about that. In fact, that's what I talked about in my book, Keto Metabolic Breakthrough, when I talked about carb cycling and even getting keto adapted in the beginning is really trying to push those carbs into the later in the day. Even though a lot of people say, well, then you're going to store them as fat. It's not necessarily true because if you go low carb throughout the day, your body's actually going to burn up all your sugar stores in
Yep.
your liver and your muscles. And so now you're
Bingo.
going to have this wide open available storage for those carbs when you consume them, put it right back into the liver, right back into the muscle in the form of glycogen. So you're not just going to turn it right into fat. And I think that's a much, much better strategy. And what I've noticed is that when people go lower carb throughout the day, they have less cravings throughout the day. When
Yep.
you start your day and you eat more carbs earlier in the day, cravings go up and your overall, the amount of calories and the amount of carbs that you're going to consume throughout the day goes up. So,
Yeah. A part of the big reason why exercise, especially lifting or interval training, is so beneficial is one, it makes your muscles a little bit bigger. And then
yeah,
muscles are like a sponge for glucose. And so, one, you're wringing out the sponge when you exercise. So you're burning the glucose, but then you're also hypertrophying the muscle, making it bigger. So it's like taking a big sponge and cleaning up that messy table. I
yeah,
had a patient just do this as an experiment. He tested his blood sugar after a meal. It was 140, right? mg per dl. And I tell patients if you make a mistake with your
yeah.
carbohydrate or just too much junk after a meal, just do a 5 or 10 minute walk. Well, he did an
Mhm.
elliptical, a 10-minute kind of like interval on the elliptical, measured his blood sugar 10 minutes later. It went from 140 to 85.
Yeah. He was
So
activating that skeletal muscle.
that's it.
Yep. And another quick tip there too is you could even just do if you know you're going to have a higher carb meal, do 50 air squats, right? Or
Yep.
20 air squats or whatever you're able to do. Just do that. Get yourself kind of in a state where you're breathing heavy. Give yourself a few minutes to just kind of calm down, take some deep breaths, and then eat your meal. Now you've activated the GLUT4
Yep.
receptor, right? So the
The outside
GLUT4
of the muscle.
transporter protein that actually acts like insulin to pull the sugar into the cell. And again, you got to get that sugar out of the cell because the sugar will create more oxidation and will create a process called glycation or
Yep.
browning inside of your body. if it's stuck in the bloodstream at a high level, like that 140, like your client there. So we want to pull that out, and we don't want to do it with a lot of insulin, right? So we want to be able to get the sugar out of the bloodstream and into the cells with the least amount of insulin production, and that's what the exercise will help with.
Yeah, and that's why I recommend like during the day. I have a stand desk here, so I have a treadmill over here that I can control with the remote. So I'll move my desk over there. Like yesterday on my Fitbit here, I walked 18 to 19,000 steps yesterday. So I
Yeah,
moved it over my
awesome.
treadmill. I'm working with patients, and then I have my little QB stepper over here. So I lower my desk, and now I'm able to pedal. So I'll go from pedaling to
Yeah,
just standing, and then doing actual walk at 3 to 4 miles per hour. I can go to 1 or 2 miles per hour if I want, if I'm really focused and I don't want to put a lot of energy out and
yeah,
put more brain energy. So it's good if you're in those work environments. Start with just the QB, where you just get the little pedals, put them
yeah.
under your desk, and just try to get an extra 5,000 steps a day with just that alone. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I can tell, from the last time I talked to you, you actually look more muscular and trimmer as well.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
thanks.
working for
Appreciate
you.
it.
It's working
Yeah,
for you.
you got it. You got it. What's number four?
Yeah. So number four is going to be infections. So sometimes you can eat a great diet, right? You can really try to put your body in the right mindset, right, and in parasympathetic mode, so you're able to produce the right amount of digestive juices. But you've got infections, particularly gut infections, that are driving up inflammation in your gut, driving up inflammation, driving up cortisol levels, and these bad gut microbes, which could be candida, right, or some sort of a yeast or fungal overgrowth. It could be bacteria like Klebsiella, for example. It could be parasites, could be worms, could be blastocystis hominis and different amoeba and different things like that. These things are going to eat the nutrients that you're consuming. They're going to poop out toxins, right? And
Yep.
those toxins are going to drive up inflammation in your system. So sometimes we need to use some herbs and different compounds to help remove these infections and follow specific protocols to get rid of these infections. So that's really the next thing that we've got to focus on there.
Yep. 100%. So first off, just being in a really healthy parasympathetic state with good acid and enzyme and bile levels, those actually provide like almost like natural bleach for
Yeah,
like the dirty picnic table. So it makes it harder for microbes to grow when there's good acids there or good bile. These things have a natural antimicrobial effect, number one. And then typically good beneficial bacteria in the gut, it's also going to produce some level of acids, whether it's glucuronic acid or different acids that are very helpful for keeping bugs in check. But then when you've eaten too much sugar or been exposed to antibiotics or your sympathetic fight or flight's off, these microbes start to overgrow. And then you're in this, then it starts to shift the whole milieu. So then you kind of have to fix everything. You got to fix the digestion, fix the diet, use the herbs to knock down whatever microbes are going on. There can be different microbes. And sometimes when those microbes are in there, you can't just go back to doing lifestyle things, changing your diet and digestion. That may not be enough. And sometimes the herbs are really necessary to kind of knock things down.
yeah, absolutely. So just like you said, I mean, naturally, if you're producing enough stomach acid and bile, stomach acid really helps to sterilize the stomach, and then bile is very alkaline. Stomach acid is very acidic. Bile goes in, really helps clean out the small intestine. We
Yep.
have a lot of people developing bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine. Sometimes these are good bacteria, but they've translocated from the large intestine into the small
Yep.
intestine, and
Yep.
now they're fermenting foods. They're eating foods before they should, creating a lot of extra gas, causing poor
Yep.
nutrient absorption. And this is oftentimes related to poor stomach acid, poor bile flow, not really creating the right environment. And now these bacteria are translocating up there. So yeah, these are all things that we need to get rid of. We need to try to really optimize stomach acid bile flow. So that's key. And then sometimes some different herbs, different compounds can be really helpful. Things like garlic, um, let's see, berberine can be really,
Yep.
really helpful here. Olive leaf can be a great one.
Yep.
Black walnut, right? What are some
Yep.
of your other favorite
I'd
antimicrobial?
say oil of oregano is
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah,
Ginger, silver. I like wormwood a lot too. These
yeah,
are all excellent compounds that are very helpful. And then typically when we do a lot of killing, we may even throw some biofilm busters in there, whether it's ginger or silver or N-acetylcysteine can
yeah,
work wonderful to help the herbs work even better, kind of disarm the bugs, so to speak.
yeah. Super important. And I know we're running low on time, so the next two I'm going to put together:
Yep.
chronic stress and poor
Hmm.
sleep habits. Right.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
these kind of go hand in hand. Obviously, if you're under a lot of stress, it's going to cause higher cortisol levels, higher epinephrine levels, which is going to cause more laxity in that gut. So when you have high cortisol, the tight junctions that keep the gut connected and with a lot of integrity become loose. Also, high cortisol will cause a reduction in the mucus membrane, which is kind of like the first line of
Yep.
defense in your gut before you get to the gut lining. So you'll have less mucus production, lower levels of secretory IgA, which is your key immune component that helps protect your gut lining. It helps protect against pathogen buildup in your gut. And then the gut junction will become more leaky or more loose and will tear more easily. So it predisposes you to leaky gut. And of course, we know chronic stress will also impact your sleep quality. And then if you're not sleeping well, that also is going to cause more issues with stress, with higher cortisol, higher adrenaline. And, obviously that's going to compound your gut health and your ability to just heal and repair and produce the right amount of anabolic sex hormones in order to repair and really thrive.
100%. We talked about anabolic building up and catabolic breaking down. Well, it cortisol, our stress hormone, the glucocorticosteroid you mentioned, is on a circadian cycle. So it's higher in the morning and lower at night. Now the problem is it goes down at night, which allows melatonin, the sleep hormone, to come up. But the problem is when we start to have overstimulation, sympathetic nervous system stress, that rhythm can start to it can actually peak up at night, which then throws off our ability to make melatonin, which throws off the parasympathetic restoration that happens when you sleep, and growth hormone going up and all of your neurotransmitters turning over. So like you kind of mentioned, that sleep, it's so important because when that throws off, that prevents the healing and recovery. And so it's almost like a double whammy, so to speak.
Yeah, you really can't recover if you're not sleeping well. That's
Mhm.
actually it's one of the most foundational things. I know I can help somebody if we can get them sleeping well. The faster we get them sleeping well, the faster their body's going to heal.
Yeah, and you can get like a Fitbit where they have an HRV function, or like the Whoop or the Aura Ring, and you can test kind of your HRV and your sleep depth. And
Yeah,
I'll do different things. I'll like take extra GABA or theanine or magnesium, or
yeah,
avoiding alcohol. Like I'll just have one like night alcoholic drink like 2-3 hours before bed, and my HRV score will be way
mm,
lower that next morning. So get a
yeah,
device where you can kind of test and see the different inputs and outputs in regards to healthy supplements and lifestyle strategy, and see how that moves the needle. You may see it with blue blocking glasses or prayer or
yeah.
meditation or breathing or cold shower. These are all important inputs, and then you can see how your body responds as a result.
Yeah, totally, totally. And the last thing is just environmental toxins.
Yep.
So we're being exposed to pesticides, herbicides, mold. You may have mold in your home that you're being exposed to, or in your office, or something along those lines. Heavy metals. Let's say you've got amalgam fillings in your mouth. You can obviously get toxins from that. Lead. Let's say you're in an old home and there's lead paint or something along those lines, or you're using conventional lipstick, which actually has lead, and you're putting that
Yep.
on every single day. So there's a lot of different exposures to environmental toxins that may be causing you not to be able to heal effectively and drive up inflammation in your body. So we got to do the best we can. So I always recommend trying to go as organic as possible with food, at least trying to get non-GMO for sure, and organic as possible with your food. That eliminates one of the major causes of toxicity and just a buildup of toxins in your body. It's like we all have this bucket of toxins, and we have a certain threshold that we can handle, and our body will eliminate those things. And
Awesome.
so when we build it up, though, once that bucket gets to the point where it's overflowing, that's when we start to have the major
Yep.
symptoms. All our systems start to shut down. So the more that we can reduce the amount that are going into this bucket, the better off we're going to be at eliminating them. And so, just trying to reduce exposure is key. Get natural household cleaning products.
Yep.
Try to get outside a lot, breathe fresh air as much as you can, and exercise. Right. So, trying to exercise, you can obviously get in a sauna and try to sweat.
Yep.
Try to open up all the drainage pathways and try to minimize your exposure to these toxins. That's really the key.
Totally. And each one of those seven could be a podcast in and of itself. And
Totally.
of course, we got lots of recommended supplements as well. We'll put like maybe a link
Yeah.
below, and you can put some of your favorite products and
Yeah.
below. So listeners that are wanting to understand, hey, what can I do for sleep? What can I do for inflammation in the gut? We'll put our favorite ones below, and you guys can take a look at that. And then also feel free, reach out to Dr. Jockers, Dr. Jockers, JOCKERS.com. David's got all kinds of great supplements and tools and great information there. And I'm Dr. J, justinhealth.com. You can reach out, podcast videos, and functional medicine consult worldwide there. Dr. David, anything else you want to add?
I just want to inspire you guys to know that you can heal. If we can find the root causes and move those, right, and eliminate and reduce those, your body has this natural built-in mechanism to heal, right? It's the innate intelligence that runs you, that God designed you with, and you can heal and you can repair and you can get inflammation under control. Inflammation is there to support you. You've got to just find out what's causing it to be chronic, what's causing it to be turned on all the time, start reducing that. And now your body's going to be back into a mode where it can heal, repair, and you can really thrive in life. And if you've tried these things we've talked about and you're not getting results, reach out to somebody like Dr. J here or my health coaching team. You're going to need a professional to help walk you through the process, put you on a protocol, and get you the results that you want.
I love it. And there's a lot of great foundational information out of the gates people can kind of take and run with, and then kind of get that extra, that extra guide or that Sherpa help to kind of get to the top of the mountain, so to speak. So,
That's
Dr.
right.
Jockers, really appreciate today's podcast. Great intel, great information. Awesome, man. You have a great day. Good chatting with you.
Awesome. You too, Dr. J. Be blessed.
Thanks, Doc.